So as today marks the 100th episode of the 365 podcast, it's now my duty to kind of do my initiation, my birth into podcasting for real, proving that I have original ideas, that I'm not just a talking head, that I do have things that make you think deeper, that give you extra substance, that you don't really find anywhere else on the internet. So that is what I've been tasked, that's what I've tasked myself to come up with. So I've come up with 4 concepts, ideas, essays, whatever you want to call them, that I have written down and I'm going to read out to you to just make you think a little bit deeper, to just give you some substance for your day and something to actually look at and use to try and improve your life. Don't worry, I'll clip these videos into extra things, extra clips, extra smaller videos so that you can see each individual one. But yeah, because we're now 100 episodes in, thank you. If you've made it, if you're still watching these episodes, thank you. I appreciate your support. We're 100 episodes in. We're almost a third of the way done. So I'm here to prove that I'm not just some guy that doesn't have anything important to say. I have original ideas, so that is what I task myself with doing, and I'm going to read them out to you. Hopefully you learn something. So thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. And let's get right into it. Statistically improbable, but not impossible. As humans seeking to find true purpose, there's no greater feeling than the pursuit of a high, hard goal. Regardless of the outcome, just the sheer journey, the chasing of a dream that you have a 1 in a million chance of achieving, is more internally fulfilling, I believe, than any other thing imaginable. Perhaps we're drawn to such pursuits because the likelihood of us actually reaching those heights is such a statistically unlikely, but crucially not impossible feat. We visualize what it would be like to live that kind of a life. We imagine the fame, the effect on our families and future generations. We dare to ask the question, why can't it be me who defies the odds? There's something to that, When the odds seem so stacked against you, it fuels some sort of internal mechanism that gets you to push even harder towards those goals. It's why people gamble or play the lottery. As dream chasers, we are playing our own lottery, and the prize is the actualization of something extraordinary. Whether or not we make it does not matter, but the thrill of trying something so bold, so incredibly improbable, is what gives us the internal satisfaction that we made the most of our very short time on this earth. So go chase those dreams, regardless of how crazy or unfathomable they may seem, because if it's not humanly impossible, absolutely anything can happen. So, this is a good one. I just want to say, in terms of the disclaimer, sometimes when you're pursuing a big dream, there is a point where it starts to actually hinder you. What I would say to that is you kind of have to logically just think about it. Think about the actual effect that it would have. There is a line. But I would say that to chase a dream, the whole idea is it's the improbable nature of it. You don't know. It's like the unlikeliness. It gives you that extra thrill. It gives you that extra sense of purpose, that sense of meaning. That's the whole point of this type of an idea. But you have to understand there is a line where, yes, the dream chasing is great, but then you actually start, hindering other people around you. Say you have a family and you want to start a business, but you have to put your entire savings budget into the business. Maybe it's not a good idea. Maybe you should start something else or start smaller. But I'm saying there's a line, but in the vast majority of cases, to go and pursue a dream is worth more than any other kind of potential drawbacks. Just because as humans, we're purpose-driven, we're goal-oriented. And we want that sense of meaning and deeper purpose. So the pursuit of the dream, the unlikeliness of it, really that's what I'm trying my best to pinpoint. It's the fact that it is statistically improbable, but not impossible. Athletics, that's kind of what inspired this because I'm on my own athletic journey to become a professional footballer. Athletics, music careers, the arts, TV, Hollywood, whatever, movies, whatever type of thing, being a writer, writing a book, inspiring people, even podcasting, YouTube videos. These things, they're statistically unlikely that you'll make it there, but it's not impossible. It's why we're drawn to these pursuits. And that's what I think, is that we are drawn to these pursuits because of the fact that it is super, we don't know what's going to happen, and that gives us the thrill, and that gives us even more reason to keep going. But yes, understand that there's a point where there's a line, but in the vast majority of cases, this whole kind of concept and essay applies to everyone's life. So I encourage each and every one of you to go and chase those dreams. So now for the second one. Different perceptions of God. Different people experience God in different ways. Some feel His presence every day. Others need revelations to feel it. Some see the mystery, others see the intellect. Some encounter him in poverty, others in abundance. God is, contrary to popular belief, not a one-size-fits-all God. What the people who preach on the street don't understand is that there are many different people with completely unique ways they've been shaped to view the world. Therefore, you logically cannot expect someone who's lived as an intellectual scholar their whole life to be swayed by the "just look around, he's with us everywhere" argument. To bring more people to the faith and to prove Jesus as true, instead of trying to shove a giant's foot into a size 6 woman's shoe, you have to tailor your approach to different audiences. Because different believers experience God in different ways, different non-believers need different explanations to see God as real. Historians and intellectuals would perhaps be more intrigued if one were to show the historical accuracy of the biblical texts and prove that the eyewitnesses really did sacrifice their lives over the truth of what they saw. Scientists would understand more if one were to point out the many inexplicable phenomena in their own craft and relate it to the mysterious and inexplicable God. People in isolation would understand that they're never alone. Rich, depressed people would understand that earthly works aren't where true satisfaction lies. And people who are on the fence about God would benefit from hearing that believing in God doesn't actually hinder them in any way, but that He is in fact the ultimate solution to living a fulfilling life. The reason why there are so many beautiful ways to explain God is because He invites every single different type of person to experience His love, regardless of how broken they are or how far they've distanced themselves from Him. So it's up to the believers to introduce God into the lives of many, not by threatening them and telling them that they'll burn in hell, but rather by relating who God is to each person's unique life experiences in an honest way. So this is a beautiful one. This is the whole, when it comes to religious debates and the whole thing that comes about when you're preaching the Bible and you're trying to get people to believe. Of course, this is primarily a Christian podcast, me talking about the works of God and my beliefs and why I believe that it is true and trying to spread the word in a beautiful way. Like, first of all, the examples I gave in this little excerpt they're not the extent of the ways you can explain God. You can explain God in so many different ways. These are just a few examples. But it doesn't end. Because there's so many ways to explain Him. Because God invites us to experience His love. Regardless of who you are, there will be a way that something will be able to relate to you. When it comes to, godly works and just belief in a higher power in general. For different people need those things. That's why I wrote this, because I think this idea that we kind of just say the same thing and everyone will believe is not true. You have to know who you're talking to, really. That's the whole point of this. Know who you're talking to when you're spreading the faith, when you're spreading the word. Because some things won't make sense to them, other things will. And that's why it's beautiful. So God doesn't need to be explained one way. You can do it in many different ways, and that's why tailoring your approach to different audiences will help many different people find their faith, which is really what we're trying to do when we're trying to spread the faith and spread the word. So that's really the main point of this, that different people need different ways to understand God, and they view Him in a different light, and their relationship with Him is different to others. So that's the whole point of this, to kind of remind people of the fact that God wants to speak to all of us. So because He wants to speak to all of us, there are many, many, many different ways to explain Him, to relate Him to people. Relating God to people is probably better than just trying to say, oh, you'll burn in hell. Oh, how can you not see it? He's with us every day. He's the creator, all that, whatever that, that kind of stuff, which works on some, but the vast majority of people will not be swayed by that. So when you're when you're talking to people about faith and about spiritual things, you don't have to try and force it onto them in that way. Try and find what things would make the most sense to them and then relate God in an honest way. I kind of played around with different words for that ending sentence, but I think honest is the best one to describe what you're trying to do. You're not trying to, you're not trying to lie to people, right? You're not trying to go over the top. You're not trying to misrepresent what God means, but you do want to be honest, kind of relating it to their circumstances. Because their circumstances will be different from other people's, there has to be different ways to relate God to it. And I think that's the beauty of it. There's a beauty in that. There's not something hateful about that. There's not something that is absolutely, something to be angry at, really. It's a beautiful thing. So when it comes to preaching the gospel, I think that is the best way you should go about it. And the idea comes about from the fact that there are so many different ways. And again, the biggest sentence that exemplifies that is the one in the middle. And you can see there's kind of a structure. Usually I explain something and then the big point is in the middle and then further explanation, right? Because different believers experience God in different ways, different non-believers need different explanations to see God as real. That pretty much sums it up. It's a very good sentence. It's a very good idea. And I think if you kind of follow these things and you sharpen your knowledge and skills on many different aspects, you can help other people turn to the faith. And we're only trying to do that to improve their lives. And obviously the faith does improve people's lives, and believing and following the teaching of the Bible helps you do better. I don't need to go too deep into that. I'm sure I've done a lot of that. But the whole point of the idea is that there's different ways. There's no one size fits all. That is the point of that idea. So here's the third idea. Missing a tap-in. So often in life, the obvious solution to a problem is the correct one. Sometimes locking yourself in a room for a while to contemplate a decision is necessary, but the vast majority of the time, what you ought to do is staring right at you. It's a tap-in. In football, sometimes even the best goal scorers miss the easiest shots. They're 6 yards out with an open net, and somehow they still miss the target. They missed a tap-in, and now they've got egg all over their face. Interestingly enough, however, each and every one of us seems to miss tap-ins every single day. Had a good business idea that you were too scared to launch? Missed tap-in. A girl giving you signs and you only realize it 3 years later? Missed tap-in. An obvious dream that you never got around to? Missed tap-in. We so often fall into the trap of overthinking, and that's what's at the heart of us constantly passing up big opportunities without even realizing it. So if there's something eating at your conscience, something you've been putting off for some time, especially if it's so obviously the right thing to do, you might be completely trashing your potential by overanalyzing it. Remember that the ultimate solution to overthinking is to take action in a significant way right now. So don't miss that tap-in. Chase those dreams, seize those opportunities, and seek to do what's right every single day. So this is kind of my own metaphor, really, relating kind of obvious journeys and the obvious next step to take in your life to a tap-in in football or soccer for the Americans. It's a thing, it's a thing. There's this weird thing. Sometimes a player will miss like the easiest shots and then score the craziest goals from like super far out. That's a thing that happens. But like metaphorically, we do that in our lives every day. The obvious thing that we should do, we don't do. Why? Because we're in our own heads, overthinking, the fear of the unknown, the fear of failure, whatever it may be that's plaguing us. We're stopped in our tracks from doing the obvious thing. Maybe we jump through hoops and jump around in circles to eventually get to where we're supposed to go. But perhaps it would have been so much easier if we had just done the thing that's eating at us. That's why I gave the few examples that I gave. Usually it's like a business idea. And then maybe you see that the business, you had an idea for a new product that no one's ever launched. And then you see like a few months later that someone is now using that product because someone else had the idea. I'm speaking from experience because I had that exact thing where I had ideas and then I saw months later that someone else was using those same ideas that I had made before. Had I launched it earlier, had I not been fearful, perhaps, and had I actually dedicated a lot of time to it, perhaps I would have made something out of that and I would have been the person to profit off the idea rather than someone else who, fair play to them, they didn't steal my idea, they just came up with it themselves and launched it faster than I was able to. But we're kind of hindering our own successes, our own potentials every day because we're missing that tap-in. That obvious thing that is eating at us that we know we should do, but we don't want to for whatever reason. I'm making the metaphor here, and I'm kind of making, because it's like easy to digest. It's easy to understand. Don't miss the tap-in. You want to do this big thing, and it's so obvious the right thing to do, you should just go for it. It relates a little bit to the dream chasing of earlier, but kind of, but not really. It's more so focused on like the overthinking part of it. The fact that we do miss it because we overthink. And you can even take it a step further and say the reason why strikers who miss tap-ins in an actual football match is because they overthink it. The ball comes to them and they're right in front of the net. Instead of just, kicking it in, which would be, 99% chance of happening, their brain makes a mess of it, right? And once they forget what they're supposed to be doing, they then miss the net. They're not coordinated because they're not focused on it. It's a result of overthinking, just subconscious overthinking in that moment, because it all happens so fast, right? But in our own lives, it happens a lot slower. And we're consciously every day overthinking these things, and as a result, we're hindering ourselves. We're hindering our own potential. So don't miss that tap-in. This was actually an idea that I said in a much, much earlier episode in this show that I'm kind of repurposing into this idea for you to make it more digestible, more understandable. That missing a tap-in is the equivalent of missing a big opportunity in your life. So don't do that. Do everything you can to seize the opportunities and make the most of every day. And that is a very important thing for our growth and for our improvement every day as people. And now for the final idea. This one's a little bit more fun, I guess. Cringe thinking. Have you ever been enjoying your day and suddenly you remember a completely random, embarrassing moment from your past and you just cringe at the thought of what you did? This is what I call cringe thinking. Our brains love to play tricks on us by randomly playing back certain, often very insignificant, awkward moments that just leave a bitter taste on our tongues years later. That time you shook someone's hand in a weird way and said something awkward in front of your crush, or tripped over your own shoelaces in public. Why do our brains seem to constantly remind us of these moments we'd rather forget happened? The brain is a power machine, but also a sneaky prankster. It'll hold information we don't want or need and get rid of the important things, and vice versa. Perhaps it's a subtle reminder to not do that awkward thing again, and that's a good growth moment. It could also be an overflow of power, causing these unfortunate moments to leak through the cracks and into our conscious knowledge. The point is, in and amongst the bitter taste of those memories, there's an opportunity for us to learn from our mistakes. So whether subconsciously our brains are reminding us of these things for a reason, or that it's just one big game, it's up to us to take control and do everything in our power to not let those moments happen again. We want to avoid being scrutinized and laughed at, so listen to your brain's cringe thinking, because even though it sucks, there's something truly to be learned from those thoughts. So this one's an interesting one. I don't think anyone really talks about that, but it's a common feeling. It happens to me all the time. Those examples are literally exact things that happen to me. Maybe not the shoelaces, but some other moment I fell and embarrassed myself in public in some way. It comes back randomly. And the inspiration for this idea was because this happened like a few days ago where I was just, I was getting ready to go to bed, and as I was kind of lying down, I some random thing popped in my mind, and then I was like, remembering that awkward time that I whatever happened in the past, right? It's just leaves a sour, bitter taste on your mouth. So I wanted to explore it a bit, and so I did. And I think there's nothing you can really do to control it, right? Because it happens. Your brains are powerful, right? They thoughts come and go every single second of every single day. Thousands and thousands of thoughts come and go. So of course, these random moments will show up. But they make you feel a little bit gross inside. Gross inside is probably the way to describe it. But I think the main point here is that it's even if it's bad, there's still growth to come from it. There's still something you can learn. Be you shook someone's hand in an awkward way, probably, don't do it in that way again. Or you were awkward in front of a girl, well, you gotta, do a little bit better. You gotta be a little more confident, right? Problems that you have to solve because of your own social awkwardness, and you can improve that. You can improve that in your life by, continuing to talk to people, being around people, be more sociable, more extroverted, all those kinds of things. So perhaps it is, that's why I'm saying perhaps it is a subtle reminder. And I would treat it as a subtle reminder to not do those things again and, do everything in your power to make sure that those things don't happen again, that you don't have to go through awkward moments, that you don't have to be laughed at. Because we're trying, I think every day we're subconsciously trying to not be laughed at. So these kind of moments and thoughts are perhaps reminders of the fact that, you were laughed at for that thing, so let's not do that again. And it's possible to not do it again. So look at them from a positive light, as much as it's bitter and gross. to kind of think about those moments in your life. We all make mistakes. We all do things that are wrong, and we all do things that are awkward. It's perfectly normal. So just, take that cringe thinking and apply it to something better in your life to grow from it. Really, that's the main point, is you just want to keep on finding ways to improve yourself and be a better person every day. And that's where the real fulfillment and purpose lies. That's why we do big journeys, big pursuits. That's why I talk about God. That's why we talk about missing the tap-in. That's why cringe thinking can be used to grow. It's all to just be better every day. So those are my ideas. Let me know Let me know what you thought of these ideas in the comments below. If you enjoyed, subscribe, follow on Spotify, like the video, show the support. It's the 100th episode, man. We're almost a third of the way done this show. But it's been good so far. It's been pretty fun. I've enjoyed it. Here, hopefully I prove that, I have some good thinking in my brain. I guess that's what I'm trying to prove. I don't know why I'm trying to prove it. I think it's just a symbolic thing, and I think these are great ideas, some interesting concepts to think about. And if I made you think a little bit today, if I taught you something, you learned something, that's very good. I kind of appreciate the time, and I appreciate you taking your time to watch this episode. If you learned something, that's absolutely amazing. That's kind of, the entire goal of this. I think my time here is done. I don't think there's anything else left to say or add to the ideas that I've mentioned. Again, I'll clip them out. You can kind of rewatch them in smaller dosages if you really want to, reflect on these things. And as we grow and improve every day as humans, I encourage you to reflect on them in the videos that I'm going to be posting very shortly. So thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching this episode. And thank you for 100, right? 100 episodes. It's my work that I did on the podcast, but thank you for your support through it all. And I'll see you tomorrow for the next episode.